Well, this happened. Hey class, Mr. G here. Today we're going over how to fix bone dry pottery, how to actually fuse these pieces back together if they break. Okay class, so today's lesson is talking about how to fuse bone dry clay back together if it breaks. If you had something piece that you'd made and it came apart in it, you can fuse these things back together. It's just how do you do it? One thing before we go deep dive into this is not fire. This has not been a bisque piece that broke. This is a piece that has still greenware, hasn't gone through the first firing yet. So I have students in my class who they'll say, Mr. G, can we fix this? Because I don't want to make the whole piece over again. You can fix it, but there's like steps you got to take to doing that. So one of those first things we got to talk about is raw clay itself. So actually taking just a regular piece of clay and what is this? Well, we have the basic chemical formula of clay, which is Al2SiO4 plus H2O. That is the molecular body of clay recipe. That's what that stuff is. The H2O part is the imperative thing. So water. How does water in our clay work? Well, water is what keeps this stuff moist and keeps it malleable. So while it is still malleable, while you can still move it and it's that fresh clay state, you can put clay together same day to same day clay without any issue. Now let's say one of the things that I say with my class is Monday to Wednesday clay. So if you worked on it on Monday, Wednesday you're going back to rework on it. You usually have to make slip. So in this cup here, I've got some dried up clay bits, and I have water over here in this tub, and all I'm gonna do is pour a little water into that dry bit of clay and let that sit there, and it's going to melt down into slip. Now notice how when I was shaking it around, it was really powdery granules of clay. That's going to work into slip a lot faster. So FYI, a little teacher tip for you guys: if you guys are making slip from scratch and you have none to work with and you need it fast, working with small pieces that have been kind of pulverized a little more will hydrate a lot faster. And making slip is kind of the same recipe as putting bone dry clay back together. We're taking clay that's completely dried out, we're rehydrating it to make it malleable again, make it so that these two pieces will fuse together. Now, that, like I was saying, that Monday to Wednesday clay, those two pieces, you're having to use slip to join them back together. Why do we use slip? Slip is a lot of water that we're pushing into the clay all at once. So we're super hydrating our clay so those two pieces fuse together. Bone dry clay works the same way, except you have to take it in a few steps. Now, at this point, most of the physical water that's in the clay, the amount of water that makes this stuff squishy, makes it to where you can work with a lot easier, most of that's gone, dried out, escaped out into the atmosphere. Physical water, the actual water bonds that hold this thing together, have not been changed. And because this has not gone into the fire, has been bisqued out, that bisque firing is actually creating that chemical reaction. That water that's in the clay is actually getting burned out completely, which turns it into a vessel that you can put water in. It's not going to get destroyed. Right now, if I poured a whole bunch of water in here, you'd see a hole form after a little bit of time. So we're going to take the same mentality of adding that water to the clay. We're just going to add it in a few stages. Now, a couple things that you're going to need, a couple tools. One, a cup of slip, spray bottle. I always have, like, for me, I have vats of 5-gallon buckets of water in the back. We're going to have a smaller container of water today. And what you're going to do is you're going to start by adding water, spray bottle here, to the outside of the clay, and we're just hydrating it up. What I've also told my students is take your piece and you can dunk it in the water buckets back there and completely saturate it in the water. And then we have a number of plastic bags. Put plastic over this. You're trying to create an atmosphere where air is not drying out the piece anymore. Now, as you can see, I sprayed it on this side, and you can already start to see it drying up again. So you can see where the water line is here, where the water did not touch, but this is starting to dry out again. So you can tell that topically, the water is only on the surface of the clay. So we have to keep adding more water. And what we're doing is we're slowly bringing water back into the piece. You're rehydrating it to make it work again. Now, if you're doing this in stages, you're not going to change any of the physical things that you've done to the piece. So if you have a lot of intricate detail to the piece, spraying it on is not going to be very as evasive as if I was dunking into the water. If I had a fragile piece that had little bits of clay that were kind of off of it, like little bits of handle or something, those would pop off because I'm being rougher. I'm not being as delicate as I could be. So by spraying it every so often, giving that water to hydrate back in the clay, I'm slowly letting it come back into the clay, I'm slowly getting it to hydrate a little more. Now it's becoming more workable for me to use. Once it gets to a certain point where you can feel it, it's that getting back to that leather hard clay. There's a little bit of tack to it because the water is making the clay sticky again. So as I'm spraying it, every so often I'll use a tool. I've got one of these cool like wire brush tools. You can use a fork or my favorite tool, the cheese grater, to rough up the outside of the piece so you're scoring. So we're getting that clay, breaking it up. And what we're doing is we're putting lines into the clay so that as I go to add slip, I'm putting slip on top of the surface of the clay. And then when I take the other clay and I push it back together, I'm actually forming a connection by adding those two pieces of clay together using that slip. That slip works like super glue. It's gonna act as that glue to bind those pieces together. So adding a little water, scoring the piece. So now we're getting a little more water into the piece. Then we roughed up the texture there. We're gonna take a tool, one of the little wooden tools, use your finger, it's all the same. Get that super hydrated slip. All it was that pulverized bits of clay. We're just gonna add that to there. Now I'm putting it on here super thick. The reason I want to add it super thick is so that I have lots of extra clay to work with. Okay, put a little more down here. Now, as I set it on here, I'm not gonna just set it and forget it. It's not like one of those commercials. So as I set it on here, I'm pushing it delicately into the piece. I don't want it to crack anymore. Right now, I just want those two bits of clay sections to set up. Using just my finger, I'm gonna smooth over that line with the slip, fill in little bits of gap again. Looks a little dry up here. Spray bottle. Hydrating it again. Smoothing the clay on the inside as well. Don't just do one side, do both so you can make sure you got a little bit of good proper seal added to that. Now, we're at this stage where the clay is now, those two pieces are working together. Do we leave it? No, it is not fully set yet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a piece of plastic, put in a plastic bag, set it off to the side. By setting it in that plastic bag, again, we're creating that atmosphere. We're creating that structure where clay can sit there and do its thing. The water can slowly erode. It's going to erode into the piece a little bit. It's because it's getting back into the clay. So as it's getting back in the clay, I want that clay to become homogenized. Both the clay and the water are reaching that equal standing so that as they start to set up and they start to fuse together, this becomes a stronger structure. So giving that time to rest takes about 5 to 20 minutes, depending on how your atmosphere is. Do you have a very humid day? Is your room hot or cold? If it's hotter, it's going to take less time. If it's colder, it's going to take longer time. Go back and feel the clay. What you want to feel for is that it's at that leather hard stage, that the clay itself looks dry. That gives me that sense that this stuff is starting to fuse together pretty good and proper. Now, because I have on this side, I got like a bump in there, I'm going to add some extra slip to the top. Again, I'm doing it gradually. I'm doing it in stages. I'm not soaking this thing all at once. I'm trying to ease those two bits together using the water to help combine equally, so I have equal parts of clay and water. Now as that starts to set up more, then I can start working with again. I can smooth it out. I can add those textures back in that were taken away because it was because it broke. Also, don't forget on the inside. On the inside, I can still clearly see the line where those two pieces broke apart. So when I take my slip, add that slip in there on top, use your finger, smooth out that section. And it's going to be a process. It's going to take several passes. You might need to do it 5 or 6 times. But is this going to be faster than remaking the piece from scratch? That's the trick that you have to figure out on your own. Now, once you get to the point where you feel satisfied, again, just step away, wrap it in plastic again, set it over in your space so that it can set up. Do it at least for 24 hours. What we're trying to make sure is that this clay piece that we've added water to in one section, by putting in the plastic bag, we've created, again, the atmosphere. I'm repeating a lot of stuff here because I want you to make sure that you get the point out of this video. By adding those pieces together, giving that 24 hours to dry out, reabsorb, recreate that atmosphere for it, when I come back the next day, this piece will be a lot stronger and it won't be fully dried out again. So if there's anything I need to tweak that last minute, go ahead and take care of it. Don't really seriously work over the clay. You're not making a new piece. You're fixing what's broken. So you're just trying to create what you already had. Don't add more to it, because that's going to create more problems down the road. Now, does this work 100% of the time? No. Does this work a good amount of the time? Sometimes. It really depends on the piece. Not every piece can be fixed back. I have a piece up here where one of the tips broke off, and because the vase itself is really thin, it didn't have a lot of support to structure to stand on. Because of where this crack was, it was on the edge of a rounded shape. That rounded shape acts as extra handholds for the clay to hold on to. This piece here that was sitting all by itself up at the very top just had nothing to hold on to. So it was sheer gravity that was trying to get to help me out. Not every piece is going to work. You just have to assess how much of the clay can actually be held on by the piece still, or is it just going to hang out in the middle of nowhere and you pray that it actually holds up. Sometimes this doesn't work. Sometimes you have to think about the way the piece is actually structured. Those are little tips of things that you know. Now, once the clay is fully set up, again, you want to smooth out the clay to get the surface that you like. I like my handy dandy cheese grater, so I can smooth top of the surface. Again, I'm being rather delicate. I know I'm looking like I'm pushing on here a lot. I'm not using a lot of pressure, and I'm trying to rotate the piece as much as I'm rotating the rasp. Awesome ceramic tip, go to Dollar Tree. These cheese graters are $1, and they work wonders when you're trying to shave down a piece. So adding that texture, or taking my cheese grater, trying to smooth up that space, trying to fix that cup just so nice, even on the surface. Go back with the tool to burnish. Again, not a lot of pressure. All you're trying to do is smooth up what you're just mending what broke. Now, the trick of this is knowing that you are the one who knows what happened, but no one else does. So take time, be diligent in your work. Don't rush through it. You want to make sure that you create a good and proper piece. We always know who's rushing. That's how you fix a broken piece of bone dry pottery. Awesome, guys. I hope that you got something out of this quick tutorial. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't forget to raise your hand down in the comments below. Let's go ahead and take care of that homework, which is to like, subscribe, share all the various platforms, get the message out there, find other people who also need some tips, need some tricks. As always, I will see you guys next class. Until then, I got some more pottery I gotta fix. Later, guys.